You are welcome to attend our meeting or listen to the proceedings of our meeting today. We then move on to item 5, which is an item in relation to the petroleum pipelines regulation industry. Ms. Mto, do you want to introduce the submission and also guide us as to who from your team is going to be making the presentation to the REC members today? Thank you. Ma'am, if you are in the meeting, just introduce the subject and lead us through. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, members and colleagues. This is the first amendment of the condition of a license that was issued to the Airport Company South Africa for its operation of a storage facility in Cape Town. I will allow Ms. Ngobeni to give us a brief on the request that we have RSC consider and approve this first amendment. Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Ngobeni.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members, management, and colleagues. The purpose of this submission is to request the REC to consider and approve the First Amendment of the conditions of a license issued to Airports Company South Africa for the operation of a storage facility in Cape Town to allow the addition of one storage tank with a capacity of 3,200 cubic meters. The decision and reasons for decision document attached here to as Annexure 1 and the addendum to the license conditions attached here to as Annexure 2. AXA made the application in line with condition 9.2 of its operation license conditions, which requires the licensee to submit an amendment application to the energy regulator if there are any changes to the facility. The change to the facility is the addition of a storage tank with a design capacity of 3,200 cubic meters. In terms of the current license conditions, the facility consists of 6 storage tanks with a combined design capacity of 9,860 cubic meters. Therefore, the net result is 7 storage tanks with a combined design capacity of 12,880 cubic meters. The construction of Tank 7 was duly licensed by NERSA on 6 March 2018 as shown in the RFD document attached as the first item 5 of the board pad. AXA complied with the construction license conditions to submit the construction progress reports and the required information on completion of the construction activity, including certificates indicating that the newly constructed tank is fit for operation. The completion of construction was confirmed during a site inspection that was conducted on 8 December 2021. It is worth noting that AXA is awaiting the amendment application under consideration to be approved by the energy regulator for it to be able to commence with operating the newly constructed tank. With that said, it is recommended that the REC consider and approve the First Amendment of the conditions of a license issued to Airports Company South Africa for the operation of a storage facility in Cape Town to allow the addition of one storage tank with a capacity of 3,200 cubic meters. The decision and reasons for decision document attached here to as Annexure 1 and the addendum to the license conditions attached here to as Annexure 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ngobeni. Members, the submission is taken as read. And if you have any questions or points of enhancements to the team, not only Ms. Ngobeni, please, this is your opportunity to raise them by show of hand. I do not see any hand, and from my side as well, I don't have any issues in relation to this particular application. And maybe on that note, let me take members to the recommendations in terms of what the team has submitted to us, which are on P5, the green P5 at the top, and it's paragraph 21. And in terms of the recommendations are that the REC must consider and approve 22.1, the first amendment conditions of the license issued to Airports Company, South Africa, for the operation of a storage facility in Cape Town to allow an addition of one storage tank with a capacity of 3,200, I think, cubic meters. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's in that edition. And 22.2, the decision and reasons for decision to approve the attached. Approve the decision and reasons for decision attached as Annex 1, and as well as the addendum to the license conditions that have been attached as Annex 2. Members, by show of hand, can I get an indication that the recommendation tabled in paragraph 22 are supported? Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. And I also support those recommendations.
I support as well, Chairperson.
Okay.
I support, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Masetti. And all members support the recommendations as tabled in paragraph 22 of the submission. Ms. Ngubeni, you have your submission. On that note, members, may I then request that we go on to item 6. Ms. Mutwa, if you may please introduce the subject, the item, and also direct us from your team as to who is going to lead the members in terms of that particular submission. Over to you, Ms. Mutwa.
Thank you, Chairperson. This is to request REC to approve Sunrise Energy Implementation Plan, which is submitted in compliance with the requirements of the regulator reporting manuals. Mr. Sintumule will assist in terms of giving us a brief on the request. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ntate Sintumule, you may come in.
Good morning, REC members, and good morning, colleagues. I'll be presenting to you the Sunrise Energy RM Implementation Plan. In our subject of the implementation plan submitted by the Sunrise Energy in compliance with the requirements of the regulatory reporting manuals. The purpose of this document is to request the Regulatory Executive Committee to approve Sunrise Energy Implementation Plan submitted in compliance with the requirements of the RRMs in terms of delegated authority, in terms of Section 3.2 of the Petroleum Pipeline Delegation Matrix approved by the Energy Regulator on 3 June 2021, monitoring and enforcement of compliance with the regulatory accounts guideline must be approved by the REC. Sunrise Energy submitted its implementation plan on 26 June 2002 as part of the Phase 3 licensees in compliance with the RRMs. Sunrise Energy Implementation Plan was evaluated against the IPM developed by Energy Regulator. The IP evaluation matrix is attached as an Annex A and is considered to be read by the members. The submitted implementation plan by Sunrise Energy and IPM guidelines are attached as here to as B and C respectively. Table 1 below summarize the silent features of the Sunrise Energy Implementation Plan against the IPM. A detailed analysis of Sunrise Energy Plan is provided for in Annex A. This one will be just providing an overall approach. The first criteria being overall approach, the scope of Sunrise Energy implementation is considered to be complete. Project or work plan, the work plan has been submitted and the key milestone are specific, feasibility of solution. The proposed solution are realistic. Compliance with RRM, the implementation plan show compliance with all RRM requirements. Budget and cost containment, the budget is solely for the purpose of implementing RRMs on regulated activities, with each separate from non-regulated activity. Cost allocation manual, a commitment has been made by that the CAM will be submitted as per time frame. Risk management, the implementation plan, also declare show all the risk and mitigation. But when we were doing analysis, we realized that the risk plan was not attached, but we did request Sunrise Energy to submit such, and they did submit. But unfortunately, the time of submission was late because the submission was already went to the RSU, but we to have the plan with us within the PPR division. The IT system compliance with the IPM requirements. Progress reporting, regular meeting, and quarterly reports have been provided for in the plan, but a detailed meeting schedule to be given to NERSA. Any other matters? Sunrise Energy requests NESA to expedite approval of the IP and keep commercial sensitive contents on the IP confidential. Recommendation: it is recommended that the Regulator Executive Committee approve Sunrise Energy Implementation Plan submitted in compliance with the regulatory reporting manuals. Thank you, RSC members.
Thank you, Ntate Sintumule. Members, the submission is before you. Are there any issues that you want clarity on or that you believe have not been adequately addressed, or there is a need to enhance certain sections of the submission? And this is your time to do so. And may I request that you do that by show of hand, members? I don't see any hand in relation to any issues for clarity or for enhancements. And on that note, may I then request members to move with me to page 4, the green stamped page 4, paragraph 15. And in terms of the recommendation is that the RSC is requested to approve the Sunrise Implementation Plan submitted in accordance with the RRS manual. By show of hands, members, can I get an indication that you are approving what is being tabled as recommendation in paragraph 15? Thank you, Ms. Masetti. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. I do support. And Mr. Mkize, I believe you, I don't see you. Oh, Mr. Mkize does as well. And the recommendations are approved as presented in paragraph 15. On that note, members, may I also request that we then move on to item 7, which as well is under the petroleum pipeline regulation industry. Ms. Mtwa, can you just introduce the subject and also guide us in terms of who from your team is going to lead the presentation of the submission to this particular committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. This is submission for determination of whether certain facilities require licensing in terms of the Petroleum Pipelines Act. And Mr. Lukele will take us through the companies that are listed there from 2.1 to 2.7 and the details in terms of the request or the request for approval that is required. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone.
I don't know, you are cutting, maybe it's from my connection. If not, I don't know if the other members heard you, but I heard you at the point when you said Mr. Lukele, and I couldn't hear anything after that. So maybe just try and maneuver your connection such that we can hear you. Unless if I'm the only member who couldn't hear you. I don't know if the other members heard you. Thanks.
Chairperson, it was just to say that Mr. Lukele will then take us through the details of the submission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ntate Lukele.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. The purpose of this submission is to request the REC to approve that certain storage facilities do not require licensing, and this is as provided for by Section 15, subsection 2A of the Petroleum Pipelines Act of 2003, as well as the bulk storage determination made by the Energy Regulator on 26 May 2016. And taking the submission as read, Chair, the details of the storage facilities in question are provided from paragraph 20 of the submission, and there are 7 facilities in total. And the biggest facility is planned to have a combined design capacity of 78 cubic meters. And all these storage facilities are below the current bulk threshold of 1,500 cubic meters, and therefore are recommended to be excluded from licensing. And in addition, Chair, there is one facility which is by Atika, which is discussed from paragraph 20, starting from paragraph 20. This facility is also excluded from licensing based on its use. It is used for the storage of diesel for own final use, Chair. And then the recommendation are on page 16, paragraph 70, and it is for the REC to approve that the 7 storage facilities listed there do not require licensing in terms of the Petroleum Pipelines Act of 2003. And Chair, apologies for the error on that paragraph 70. It is not 2 facilities, but 7 as indicated. With that, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lukele. Members, are there any issues or questions of clarity or enhancements from your side? If there are, please, by show of hand, let me get that indication so that we can consider what we have to raise to the team. Thank you. I don't see any hand for now, Mr. Lukele, but from my side, if we go to P5, sorry, I'm just trying to get there. On P5, I think one of the questions that I wanted to ask was, why do we continue to use Google Earth and not the GIS? Because when I look at some of the images, really they were not giving one the fuller understanding of the area in terms of that. And also, if you go to P6, paragraph 24, and the issue of the threshold there, you get an indication of 80, and when you go to 25, there's 1,500, and I wasn't too sure as to exactly which one is the actual threshold. If you can explain that for me. I think, I don't know if I've missed anything else. Yeah, but I think other than to say that some of the layout or graphics that were picked up from Google Earth, really they're not really clear. And my assumption was that with GIS, GIS was intended to really improve what we have to put in our submission. So those were the 2 questions that I have. Yeah, if I've missed something, I will let you know. But for now, those were the ones that I have. If you can just respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think Mr. Mtete will answer the first question of GIS, but then just explaining the threshold. The one in paragraph 24 is for the EIA.
Hey, I'm struggling to hear you. I don't know if members are experiencing the same. And my connection, I've checked it. It's fine. You keep on cutting. I don't know if you can just try and.
From my side, it's clear, Chairperson.
Yes, Chair. Yes, Mr. Mkize. Mr. Mkize, you may come in. I think I've lost you as well. Members, can you hear Mr. Mkize, or is it me?
Chairperson, we seem to be hearing everything well from our side.
I can hear Mr. Mkize as well.
Okay, but let me just put it on record that I'm really struggling to hear the team and as well as Mr. Mkize, but I will just try and see what I can do to be able to hear what is being said in this particular meeting. I see Martin's hand is up. Martin, you come in, but I must say that I've missed what Ms. Mtwa was trying to explain, and as well as Mr. Gumete. Martin, you may proceed.
Morning, Chair and members. Chair, we seems to be hearing you and Mr. Mkize and the EM. Sorry if it may be on your side, but yeah, I think Mr. Lukele said I will answer the GIS question. and then he will respond to your second. Chair, in terms of GIS, at this stage, the data sets that we have is limited for petroleum. You may recall that we fell behind as a division in terms of that. In this financial year, after that tender process was done, we will be enhancing that. But we now currently rely on the information that applicants, and in this case, when it's, let's call it inverted commas, registration, or where they following the bulk procedure in terms of this process, they provide the information to us. So then from our side, we do a check. But I note your comment, and I think we will report back in terms of that. But we don't currently have data sets for this that we've procured as NERSA, and we'll be working with the GIS specialist on that. Sorry for the long answer, but that's currently the situation. And then Mr. Lukele indicated he will respond to your second question.
Thank you. And in terms of the second question, I think was why maybe different threshold. The one in paragraph 24, Chair, it's for the environmental authorization requirement, and that is in terms of NEMA, the National Environmental Management Act. The one in paragraph 25 is the one that was made in terms of the bulk storage determination. So the two is not necessarily the same. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, members. Any other issue of clarity or of enhancements for the team? Please let me know if you do by show of hand. I don't see any hand, and in terms of the recommendations, may I request that we go to the recommendations in relation to this particular submission, and the recommendations are in paragraph 70 of page 16. And in terms of what we are recommended to approve as the REC committee, I will read the recommendations for the record. Is that A, we are to approve the Atika's existing storage facility in farm Zemekom 4 in the northwest. And the second one, we are to approve Christo and Nani Trading existing storage facility in Bloemfontein in the Free State province. And C, we are to approve Dudal Petroleum's existing storage facility in Pretoria West, Gauteng province. And D, we are to approve Intelligent Fuel Solutions existing storage facility in Paarl, which is in the Western Cape. And E, we are to approve Servcon contractors a proposed storage facility in Klerksdorp, which is in the Northwest province. And F, we are to approve the Falk Falaise existing storage facility in Marble Hall, Limpopo province. And G, we are to approve WEARE Fuels proposed storage facility in Dealsville in the Free State province. And members, by show of hand, can I get an indication that you do support the recommendations as tabulated in paragraph 70 of page 16? Thank you, Ms. Masetti. I've just connected over my phone because I think I'm struggling. I can't see any other.
All members are supporting Chair. Apologies, members. It seems the chairperson have lost connectivity. If we can just give her a minute to rejoin.
Ms. Hutton, I just got cut off. I don't know if any members are supporting the submission. I do. I only saw Ms. Masetti. Please assist me because
Yes,
I was also cut off.
No, the chairperson, I have advised members, all members are supportive of the submission.
Okay, I then see Mr. Gumede, Mr. Mkize, Ms. Masetti, and myself. We do support the submission. And Ms. Mtoa, your submission in terms of item 7 has been approved. May I then request members that we move on to item 8, which is on the pipe gas regulation industry. Mr. Ngumalo, do you want to introduce the submission and also guide members as to who from your team is going to be presenting the submission to us? Please come in. Thank you, Tate Ngumalo.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, members and morning colleagues. This item is an application by Egoli Gas for amendment of license conditions. Mr. Mashamba will be the one that will take us through it. I think he will just indicate the facilities that are being added onto the license conditions. Perhaps just give a brief explanation about the need, what cost this amendment that is requested by the other. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Mashamba, you may proceed.
Good morning, Chairperson, the members, management, and colleagues. The purpose of this application is to request the REC to consider and approve the application by Egoli Gas to amend conditions related to its license to trade in gas in the Gauteng province. This application was made in line with Section 24(1)(a) of the Gas Act. The applicant, which is Egoli Gas, seeks to amend condition of his trading license to include 2 new gas customers in certain areas within the Gauteng province. Egoli Gas mentioned that it was approached by 2 new customers that indicate that it needed additional gas for its operations, and this current supplier could not meet its demand due to shortage of surplus gas. Egoli Gas report that its customers have opted to switch over to Egoli Gas because Egoli Gas had sufficient gas and could meet its demand. The new customers have therefore entered into a gas supply agreement with Egoli Gas, and they are serving a notice with its current gas supplier. The 2 new customers are already connected to the gas distribution and transmission facility, and therefore there won't be a need for any construction to interconnect the new customers. The applicant, which is Egoli Gas, has indicated that it will charge its customers gas price that are incongruent with the approved maximum price by NERSA, in line with license condition, which is 13.1. Based on the NERSA report on monitoring of Egoli Gas compliance with the approved maximum prices, tabled at the PGS of 7 September 2021, Egoli Gas was found to be complying with Section 21P of the Gas Act by charging its customers an actual price that is below the approved maximum price. In addition to that, Egoli Gas was also found to be complying with Section 22 of the Gas Act, as it did not unduly discriminate between customers when charging price for the period of 1 July 2020 to 30 June 2021. The need for gas by Egoli Gas new customers is essential. Therefore, amending Egoli Gas trading license condition is needed to enable Egoli Gas to supply gas to its new customers. Based on the information available and its analysis, it is recommended that the Regulator Executive Committee approves the following: the application by Egoli Gas to amend conditions related to its license to trade in gas in the Gauteng province, the attached reasons for decision, which is Annexure 1, and the attached addendum. Before I conclude, I would also like to make some apologies on, I think, paragraph 21.1, which we indicated 3 new customers instead of 2 new customers. And also paragraph 25 should have been deleted. It was not deleted. In addition to that, there was also a mistake where Annexure 1 that was attached was with the track changes. And we noted this mistake later on, and it was changed, I think, yesterday. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mashamba. Members, the submission is before you and it's taken as read. Are there any issues or issues of clarity that you may have for the presenter or the team in the gas division? If you do, this is your opportunity to raise them, and please do so by a show of hand. Members? I don't see any hand, Mr. Mashamba, but from my side, I think I have, I think, one or two of comments. I think under paragraph 2 on the purpose, I thought maybe we normally do say, especially 2.1 B, we often do say that we request the approval of the reasons and the reasons for decision. And if I look at that 2.1B, it just talks about reasons for decision only. And again, if I go to paragraph 4.3, and I think for me with paragraph 4.3, it's an issue of the time that has taken NESA to really consider this particular application. And if you look at it, we did have the submission and there was communication between NESA and the applicant in terms of the information or additional information required. And we ultimately had a decision made that by 4 October 2021, the information required from the applicant was adequate. And if one looks at the process taken, we then only did the notice to the public on this particular application in April, which is 6 months after the application. And as I was reading this particular submission, I was asking myself as to whether are we being efficient in terms of the time that has taken NESA to handle this particular application? Because if you look at 4 October 2021 to April 2022, it's almost approximately 6 months. And the other processes in terms of the comments and the public hearing, I note that they're within the required regulatory time. I'm raising this because we often accuse of not being efficient in considering or in processing applications that NESA is required to look into. But if it's going to take us 6 months after we have said that we have received adequate information from the applicant, because after we have said that, the process is within our control to make sure that the notice in terms of the required publication, we do them as speedily as we can. But 6 months, I'm not sure, maybe there's something that I have missed in the presentation that may have led the team to have that particular delay, because it's almost a year. It's August, September, October, 2 months before the end of the year. We had to consider this particular application. If I can be assisted to understand those 2 points that I have, I'll appreciate it. And I also see a hand from Mr. Gumede. Mr. Gumede, you may come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to your members and colleagues. Just one question for me. Just to maybe just by way of reminding, paragraph 6.1. I just like to understand, how is it possible that we have a company that is supplied by another company, which company does not have gas, but the company that it supplies has gas? And unfortunately, it's not just about this particular application. There's been a couple of others that we've dealt with. If I could just be clarified, how is that possible? I see that the supplier is struck out, so I can't mention the supplier name, but to me, it makes little sense. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kumete. Mr. Mashamba.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think I'll start with Mr. Kumede 6.1. So it appears that the applicant is supplied with gas by another gas, so they have a contract, annual contract. So it appears that the main supplier of gas no longer has additional gas for additional requirement for other customers. So which means that if its current supply, if its current customer need additional gas, it cannot meet its additional gas, whereas the applicant still has sufficient gas on its contractual agreement with its supplier, hence it is able to supply gas to other customers. I hope I'm clear. So maybe to be practical, if in this case it's 700 million gigajoules per annum, and it still has it still has more than 200,000 gigajoules per annum. So if there's any customer that need additional gas, it can be able to supply that gas to another customer. Whereas the main gas supplier that is a 700 million gigajoules contract with the applicant does not have any additional gas to supply its other customers that might need additional gas. Thanks. Then with regard to the issue on the purpose, I think will enhance, Chair, in line with your suggestion. And I'm not sure with regard to the delay if management would like to come in on this one, just to be technically correct. Thanks.
Thank you. I see Mr. Kumete's hand is up. I don't know if it's a follow-up. And Tate Kumete may come in.
Yes, Chairperson, it is a follow-up. Have a buyer who buys gas without any clients, and in terms of competition law, is it not, would that not be deemed as trying to block out other potential traders? Because clearly, from what the presentation is indicating, is that we have somebody that bought more gas from the supplier than they had the market for. Now it raises the question, and I guess they would be sitting with this gas, oversupplied gas or oversubscribed gas for many years. It raises all sorts of questions in my head in terms of whether is there a relationship between these two that perhaps is far more than meets the eye. And also, this is the indication here that there is an accumulation of gas somewhere from what is being supplied than what is being sold. So clearly there must be an accumulation somewhere if the difference is that there is, if there is a difference between what is being bought to what is being sold. So there must have been an accumulation. Is that the fact? And how is that being recognized and funded? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kumete. Any response, Mdate Ngumalo or Mashamba, on what Mr. Kumete has elaborated on?
Maybe, Chairperson, with your permission, just to quickly clarify the point regarding the accumulation of gas. What happened in this case is simply a scenario where source of gas was approached first by the customer. And it so happened that they don't have the gas available to supply further to these two new customers. And that is why the two customers then elected to approach Egoli Gas, which is, happened to actually have some gas supply available, because they had not allocated that gas supply to all of their customers. They do have about 7 million gigajoules, and of that, there was, a supply that they could utilize to actually meet the demand of these two customers. So that is essentially why they were able to then agree to come in and assist the two customers. Thanks, Chairperson. I think the colleagues will then add on to regard to the, I see there's a hand from Louise and the other colleagues. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ngumalo. Ms. Duplessis, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just to elaborate on that, I think also just in response to Mr. Gomede's question, initially when the third party, when Sasol allocated or contracted with its customers, it had a special arrangement with third-party traders, all third-party traders, to give them a specific gas allocation that will enable them to grow their operations eventually in competition with Sasol gas. And that is why we see that some of these third-party traders still have some gas available to grow their operations, although you will also see in the RFD that those allocations are also being depleted quite fast. So just to give clarity on that part. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Du Plessis. Mr. Gumede, I hope the team has noted these points of announcements. Do we have any follow-up in relation to their responses?
Chairperson, I don't. I still, anything that is a fluid like that, from where I'm saying, it still does not make sense to me that you. Okay, I guess what I'm saying here is that if somebody has got more allocation than what they can sell, and the pipeline keeps flowing, to me, it means they must be accumulating somewhere. But Chair, I'm happy to let it go. I do support this. It doesn't change my support for the submission in hand, but it does not make sense to me.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. And Mr. Ngumalo and team, I hope you have noted the issue raised by Mr. Gumede, and that in the next or in future submissions, we make sure that this is thoroughly explained and addressed. And I think from my side as well, in terms of the issue of the time lag between when 4 October 2021 and April, I think it was April 2022, when we were really advertising for public comments. I think 6 months is just too much. And we've been accused as an organization for not being efficient. And when things are within our control, we really cannot take 6 months to be able to start advertising that particular this particular application. And if you look at item 5, I think it's on the petroleum pipeline side, there is a paragraph there where they've clearly articulated the time that it has taken them to process the application. And I would like to request you, Mr. Ngumalo, to just really take note of that and try and do the same with pipe gas submission, because we often struggle with AG to justify the times that are taken to do certain regulatory work. And if we have a paragraph like that one, I think it's paragraph 8 or 9 on item 5, you may want to consider putting it in your submission, because it can take us almost a year to process an application like this one. I think it has taken too long. And I don't know from your side if you are going to respond to my question, but if you can't, because I saw it as a challenge, I'm just asking that you take my input into consideration such that we really improve our turnaround times in terms of our regulatory activities. I now see Mr. Mkize's hand is up. Mr. Mkize, do you want to come in that?
Thanks a lot, Chairperson. I appreciate the responses, but on this issue of the over allocation, I'm now triggered because my understanding is that you don't have the molecules actually flowing through, but you've got an allocation, and that allocation based on the future development of the market as envisaged by the client to the original supplier, that they enter into that kind of an agreement, and those molecules can be directed elsewhere whilst the other person has not actually secured that market. Then when that market is secured, then they got the allocation. The original supplier does not have the right to then contract, because it is a contracted volumes. And therefore, the question is maybe in terms of competition, how that impacts in terms of locking in those molecules before someone else can come in and ask for them and not be able to get them, therefore being deemed to be kind of anti-competitive. I'd hoped that the managers responding would actually just explain that aspect, because I'm kind of at peace with some aspects of the question because of my understanding, and it could be that maybe my understanding is not correct. Hence, I just want them to confirm if my understanding is correct or not, firstly, and secondly, if there are any timelines that are linked to deeming that to be anti-competitive. Yes, and I do support your chairperson, your viewpoint that we should always account for the time we spend on the application, because it helps to like also ensure that we don't have some blame leveled against us. But moreover, it's not just about that, it's for us to improve our efficiency and effectiveness in regulation. And of late, we've been actually uploaded for processing the registrations in the electricity division, and we need to keep that momentum. Thank you.
Thank you, Ntate Mkhize. Mr. Numalo or Mr. Mashamba, do you have any response to make in relation to what has been raised by members? Thank you.
Chairperson, I think we've noted the concerns that members have raised with regard to the timing of the processing. I think we must just make sure that we follow that, to make sure that all the issues that could be challenges are actually dealt with much more speedily in future going forward, so that we can have much more quicker processing of the application. And we've also noted the point that Mr. Mkhize is making with regard to the allocation. I think what we will do, we'll just maybe also contact the Egoli Gas and make sure that we get sufficient clarity on the issue of whether there is any accumulation that they are doing on their side and going forward, so that there can be measures to deal with that from an accumulation perspective. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. I see Ms. Maseti's hand is up. Ms. Maseti, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, there's no reason that has been provided to this meeting, and we've taken more than 10 minutes just drilling on the issue of the delay. I think it is fair and it is proper that the reason be stated and be put on record. It has to. It will be wrong to say that it will be looked into in the future without stating what the reason is. So that reason is not a reason that is going to be stated in the submission outside of this meeting. And because it is an issue that is raised in this meeting, it has to be responded to before we take a decision. We have to keep those procedures intact and adhere to them. So Mr. Numalo must provide that reason. It must be on record. And then the second thing, Chairperson, regarding the question of the allocation, and sometimes nobody knows because nobody has really investigated maybe the withhold or the possible withhold of gas supply if it's allocated to a particular entity. I think it's something that they may inquire into in terms of Section 4D, because you can inquire on the activities of licenses, and in this case, there's a concern raised by 2 members of the committee with regards to the gas supply, the way that it is done, and because we consider it as a scarce resource, and if it's then there's a possibility of withholding it so that other people are not able to access it, as the Act's objective states so, it is something that is worth inquiring into. So I would suggest that as one of the recommendations that are added, it may be something that the division must look into and come back to the committee on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Masetti, for your input. And from where I'm sitting, I'm not sure if we should also have those additional recommendations that we have made, because already in terms of the time, the applicant has really been put in a disadvantageous position. They've applied and we confirmed the adequacy of their information somewhere around October 2021. And we can't really take this submission back to the team such that the team addresses those issues, some of which are operational. And if the issues really affect the recommendations from where I'm sitting, I will support that. But I think what the other members have made in terms of the technical comments that they have made is that this is not adequately addressed, and I don't know whether it, as members of the committee, it's making us not to really approve this particular application. If it doesn't, if it does prevent us from making a decision, then that's when we can send the submission back. But if it doesn't, and those are points that the team needs to take into account in future application, they must do that. But looking at the time it has taken for us to consider rather this particular application.
I submit my proposal is different, Chairperson. Maybe you didn't understand. My proposal is different, Chairperson. It's not to stop the decision or to take the submission back. It is a matter that is arising as a result of this application, just to inquire around issues of gas supply, if it is available, so that because it impacts the functioning of the market. So that gas supply issue, the way that it is happening, is what could be inquired into, not necessarily the subject of today's decision that is required from us, Chairperson. Thank you.
Noted, Ms. Masetti. Okay, those are points of announcements. Members, may I then take you to the recommendations with our on the green page 11 of 45, and it's paragraph 12. And in terms of the recommendation is that the RSC considers the EGOLI application to amend its conditions of license to trade in gas in the Gauteng province, and secondly, to approve. I think we are referring there to reasons for decisions. I think it should be amended to the decision itself and reasons for decision in terms of Annexure 1, and as well as to approve the attached addendum, which is attached as Annexure 2. And also for the team to note the comments that members have made in relation to the technical comments made by members that needs to be enhanced, and as well as the procedural comments in terms of the time we need to consider such particular application. By show of hands, members, if we are willing to approve the recommendations that are stated in 12, and as well as also for the team to note the comments made. And by show of hand, members, can I get an indication that you do support the recommendations under P11 12.1? Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Thank you, Mr. Mkize. I also do support Ms. Masetti. Thank you, Ms. Masetti. We do. Mr. Ngumalo and Mr. Mashamba, the submission is supported, and please do take note of those additional comments that members have made in relation to this particular submission. On that note, members, may I request then that we move on, or rather move on to our closed session of the meeting. And on that note, may I request that, or rather may I thank the stakeholders and interested parties that have attended our open session of the meeting, and to request IT to stop the live streaming.